Welcome to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. And I am really excited to welcome the wonderful Lynn Whitbeck to the show. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Hey, Ruth. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. So for those that don't know Lynn, she is the queen of sales. Business owners and entrepreneurs hire Lynn to ignite winning sales teams because most are chasing down clients, stuck in a chaotic sales cycle and lacking client retention, conversions and profits. So she helps transform thinking to the client's perspective, end sales chaos with a robust strategic plan to harvest the hidden profits. Wow, that's amazing. And I'm sure so many people listening to the show could do some of your expertise, Lynn.
Well, that's what I love doing. It's like when we help people with their sales to get more clients, they in turn get to help them with their product or service, and then when they help them, they help others. I mean, it's like this incredible ripple. And when you help their companies grow, they can hire more people. That impacts their community. They can help their clients. It's a really positive high.
Absolutely. And I think I think the way that I feel that it's changed is people are much more focused on building relationships, because that's what people want, is to feel connected, isn't it, to the person that they're buying from.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing relationships and sales with relationships or by relationships my entire career. That's what it's all about. And people want to work with people that they trust, that they find are credible and capable. And that is, and at the end of the day, you want to work with people that you like.
Right.
Nobody wants to work with somebody that I mean, not unless it's like a one-time thing and they're the only people that you can work with. Because
Right.
then you're
And
just always stuck with this. Yeah.
it's a real brain health issue, isn't it? Because we just don't feel right when we haven't got that right relationship developed, and we know that something is really off. And if you don't approach it in the context of understanding how the other person behaves, what they want, how they're feeling, their emotions that they have, and what ultimate outcome they want, you're just not going to really mesh that connection with the person that you're talking to.
No. I mean, communication is such a huge part of sales. And, for what I really focus on first and where everyone starts when they start working with me is, what does the client think? Because that's going to guide your entire relationship. What does the client want, need, or lack? How is that going to help them? Is it going to solve a problem? Is it going to address a concern? Why does it matter to them? How does it benefit them? So they can what? Right? And when you do that, you actually take yourself, get out of your own way, and really focus on the other person and what they want, what they need, and that client thinking. And first of all, that actually helps with your own perspective and your brain health, because you can start to do that walk in another person's shoes. You can start to see things from a different paradigm. And that is one of the most important gifts that you can give also to yourself, because it impacts every aspect of your life. And then you can, not only when you apply that to your clients and helping guide them through whatever the process is that you work with them on, guide them to a decision, guide them through the implementation, guide them to seeing the incredible results that you deliver with whatever your product or service is. The other thing is, you can now apply that with your peers, with your coworkers, with that same type of communication mastery. And it does involve, that's the beautiful thing about sales. It teaches you flexibility. It teaches you adaptability, how to meet people halfway. And because people, just because they have a different opinion does not mean they're wrong. It just means that you may not be able to see their opinion because your own blinders. And one of the beautiful things about sales is that you do have the opportunity to work with so many different people and different styles, that if you're going to be a sales champion, you truly have to become a master at building relationships, and finding that common ground with all kinds of people, and people who could be very opposite.
Yeah.
The opposites attract, even in life, in your personal life, how that can actually be some of the strongest and best relationships ever, because you complement one another. But you
Yeah.
have to be able to clearly communicate with them. And that is that brain, that wonderful, beautiful brain that can continue to grow and flourish. And you can keep adding new synapse connections when you use it. And I'm telling you, in sales, you use it all the time, because you're meeting new people. You're working with people, connected to new people within the organization. They have a new challenge. They have a new situation that's arisen. All of those things come into place. And then you actually use that in your personal life.
Yeah.
From negotiating with your partner what you're going to watch on Netflix.
That's right. And you know, the people that are the best salespeople are kids.
The puppy
Because
dog.
they just keep going negotiating, don't they? Till they get what they want.
Yeah, they don't give up. They come at
They
it in
really
different
don't.
ways.
And they tap into your emotions, don't they? They know what strings to
Yeah.
pull.
Well, and that's one of the great things with kids, with their resilience. I mean, when you think about it, as adults, we start to, fear can start to take over, and those things that we will become blockers. And you think of the kids from the youngest age, where they're cruising along the sofa and they're holding on for dear life so they can sort of learn to walk like Frankenstein. They keep falling. They take some hard knocks, but they keep getting back up.
Yeah.
You know, and you do it when we're riding a bike. Everybody moved from the tricycle to the bicycle.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
And so why do we unlearn that as we get older? Or why do we start to want to protect it and feel like we can't keep stretching and growing?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's our fixed mindset comes into play, doesn't it? Based on our own personal experiences. And we start tagging, oh, because this didn't work, this won't work. And so we start building this negative narrative around what we're capable of achieving. And it's so easy to do so quickly, particularly if you're in an environment as a young person where the negative narrative comes in early, and it starts shaping your own personal beliefs and your own thought process. But before we dive into that, I'd love to know what are you passionate about in life right now?
Right now, it's not to cough. I got this horrible tickle in my throat.
No, that's okay. You just crack on. I think it's really important, isn't it, that we just going back to the sales conversation is, and the pieces of relationship, is we give people that space just as we've done now to recompose yourself if you're in a sticky situation, and give people grace to do what they want to do. So if you're ready.
Yes, I keep trying to interrupt you for the pause.
No,
I need to do my own powerful pause. But, because that is one of the things that sometimes you want to jump in and try to help or solve something. And the other person just really wants to talk about it. Right. And they're not actually looking for a solution. They just sort of want to talk about it. But I do encounter that with clients. They'll say, well, I've tried that and it didn't work. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. That's a negative mindset. And it's like, well, why didn't it work before? And what's changed?
Yeah.
And sometimes when we look at things, and I myself have had epic failures, but I go, well, what did I learn from that?
Yeah.
What can I still use from that? What do I need to change? What can I do better or differently?
Yeah. I remember being on a sales with a sales team with a big company, and it was very clear that we were not answering the client's questions to win the sale. they'd ask specific questions around who was going to be on the team and what we were going to deliver, and it was just not landing for them, and it was quite obvious to me that we hadn't ticked all of the boxes, not just at a delivery level but an emotional level, because they were getting agitated by people not answering that particular question. And often, you know, I've been in enormous big sales pitches overseas and stuff, and you can see by the language in the room that isn't spoken that we're in a losing battle, because the body language is just telling you everything around whether that person is interested or not interested. And often people who just go with their pitch and don't pay attention to the dynamics of the surroundings, which is all about brain health. And I like to look at the 5 pillars, surroundings of which is one. They miss the cues, don't they? And that important pause, like you mentioned, to take in the whole situation that relates to the conversation or the relationship that they're trying to have or build.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, I actually remember a time that I was making it was the sort of for a big project, multi-million-dollar deal that, everybody had flown in. I had the president there, and
wow.
I'm doing the presentation for the client. And, I knew everybody that was in the room. I made sure the people that I had met, some of them I'd only met in passing, but I had sort of done like who they are, what they, some information about them, because, you have to sell to everyone in the room. So the people that are going to be implementing it, the people that are influencers, and then the people that are decision makers.
Yeah.
And so when I was doing that, and I had also tied it into what they as an organization did, and really created a metaphor for, what and how we were going to service them, but within their own sort of story.
Mm-hmm.
And the president of the company just thought, oh my gosh, she just lost it. What the heck? And I could tell, because I looked at him like he was like literally going, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I knew if he was close enough to me, he would have kicked me or something.
Yeah.
I looked around to the client, and every one of them had leaned in, and they were nodding their heads. Direct eye contact. They were in it. And it wasn't until, and he just kept he was like, literally, I thought he was going to have a conniption fit or something. And then he finally looked around the room, and he saw the same thing. He said, okay, I don't know where the heck she's going with it, but they get it.
Yeah.
And I closed that deal that day, after that meeting. Their senior executive came up, shook my president's hand, and said, we're moving forward, and it's because of her. She gets us. She knows exactly what we need and how to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was and afterwards, when we were at lunch, the president was going like, I just thought you had completely lost it. I didn't know what, it's like, well, it's because I had spent time getting to know them and understanding what mattered to them and why. And then I put it in that context, how what we were going to do for them fit, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're having to read around, you're having to learn about other people, and it does require you to change, instead of reading from a script, it's like, what is really important to the people that you're speaking to? And that includes every aspect of your life, like those kids who keep asking. It's because whatever it is, they want those extra 2 cookies or.
And they don't say no, do they? They just keep asking until you say no.
Right.
Happening. They realise the negotiation is over. So I'd love to know, in the context of your life experience, what would you say optimal brain health is for you personally?
Oh, wow. Well, getting a good night's sleep. No, but definitely the continuing to be a lifelong learn it all. I will never be a know-it-all, but I will be a lifelong learn-it-all. I think that continuing to push myself to accept challenges, to when things don't work out, to have that resilience, like Captain Marvel, to pick myself up, dust myself off, and say, okay, that didn't work, but this is what I got out of it. This is what I know didn't work. Now I know what I can try or how I can tweak this. And everything you do, it's just that learning process, whatever it is. And then even when you think you've got something new comes around. We're constantly in a world that's evolving and changing. And so the opportunities to learn are just abundant. But when we do that, it keeps our brains so active, and I think it keeps us young. It keeps us healthy.
It's so important. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It does keep us young. It's one of the constant learning is such an important factor for cognitive function, especially as we age, because our brain, if you don't use it, you lose it. So our brain prunes itself. So if we're not creating new neural networks in our mind, it basically starts to die. Because it decides it doesn't need those particular networks. So actually learning is one of the most important things, is learning for retirement and aging, actually, which is one of the 11 risk factors of brain health. And I love the fact that you mentioned learning, because and that journey that we go on through life, because I like to think of it, when we go on a journey, we like to take a map, don't we? And normally have a rucksack that's full of the things that we really need. And sometimes people, when they fall over in life, which we all do, rather than noting that maybe that wasn't the path to take and noting maybe they should have picked their foot up, they kind of put the rock in that reminds them of falling over, and they put it in their rucksack. And then they carry it around, and it starts weighing them down. And the next time they fall over, they put in the other rock that made them fall over as a reminder, rather than learning to pick their feet up or learning to take the right path and marking the map to say, no, that's not the way to go. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, it's not about the mistakes, but it's learning from the mistakes. And we so often don't take that time, do we, to really dive deep into the learning from our experiences, but dwell on the mistake itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about sometimes you have to travel the long road around to make a short distance, right? So you take the long road around to travel a short distance. And but the journey can be really phenomenal. And also that exposure to all the different things. Even like your analogy of my daughter and I love to do road trips. And we are going down and we're doing this road trip, and we had this specific route that we planned to take. I took a left turn. We ended up in Petaluma. Maybe you don't know, but Petaluma is in California. It's north of San Francisco. And I'm going like, well, what the heck? We're in Petaluma. Well, I've never been in Petaluma. This is sort of cool. And it's like, it rolls right off the tongue. I went to Petaluma, on my way to San Francisco. Anyway, but it was, okay, well, I got to see Petaluma, which I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't taken a wrong turn, and went through this whole dairy country thing. And it's sometimes that experience is something that becomes like, it's a funny story or a treasured memory. I don't know if I'd say treasured memory, but we had fun. We had a laugh over it.
Yeah.
And you don't take it as like, oh my gosh, I took a wrong turn. It took us an extra 2 hours to get to where we were going. Oh no, the world is over. Perfectionism is overrated. And sometimes those wrong turns in life are actually some of the best fun adventures that you can have.
Yeah, I totally agree. And often they set us up for success for the next journey that we take, because we learn from the experience of going on that journey that we would never have otherwise had. I was actually listening to Simon Sinek actually just recently, who was talking about the fact that everybody's been bowled over with the change of the pandemic. And actually, we've just got used to things being the same. And we can't sometimes get a bit complacent when everything's the same. So we get lazy because we're able to be lazy. And then somebody throws a curveball, like you say, going off the road, and suddenly our whole world has been turned on its head. But actually, it's, time is never constant. It's always changing, and it's been able to adapt and be, like you mentioned earlier, is having that resilience to change. And the more we experience change and going on these diversions, the more we can accommodate the diversions in life, and deal with the bumpy roads and not get stuck on the highways, because it's convenient, because they don't always get us to the place we want to go anyway.
Yeah. I really look to, those people who they reject complacency, and they're looking for, not the shiny object, but just, that opportunity and those new experiences and new thinking. Those are all ways that we can continue to not only expand as individuals, but as a business. It's the innovators and the disruptors who continue to thrive, and that who can better weather these types of storms, because they're not satisfied with the status quo. They're always pushing. And it's like, okay, well, we did that. That's great. Dust ourselves off. Now what's the next big thing? What's the thing or the things that we're going to be working on? And so that keeps, businesses also much more healthy, in my view, because they, and they're not caught as off guard, because they're actually actively looking and seeking sort of what's out there and what's happening. And so when something is massively disruptive to the system, that they're able to, they're, maybe not exactly ready for it, but they're better able to respond and to pivot as needed.
And what, from an entrepreneurial perspective, what do you think holds people back in the context of building relationships and making sales? Because it's a skill that is really important one to learn, and not everyone gets it right. What are the typical pitfalls? Because just trying to reflect in the context of people's brain health,
it's
where
really,
people fall over.
I would say the number one thing is it's fear-based. So there's something that went on about people. Some people are afraid of rejection. They're afraid to ask that they're going to get that no. They don't have enough confidence or assurance in what they're doing. It could be that they've had really, especially for women, we've had really negative experiences in a sales environment. The classic sleazy salesperson trying to shove something down our throat that we don't want, need,
like,
and won't take no for an answer type of thing. And, or that we feel like we've been taken advantage of or manipulated. So all of those things, those are all those negative sides to everything. And one of the things is that we need to flip the switch, so you're not selling somebody something, you are guiding them to a decision so that you can help them create more of an impact, for their business, for the people that they work with, for their clients, for their community. And that's what you're really doing. And if you have your product or service is something that will truly help people and make that difference, that you can create that impact, well then, come on, you need to be able to help them get that done. Because it's not like it's world peace or it's rocket science, but I've always felt that the things that I do, if I take something off someone else's plate and they don't have to think about it again, I made their world a little better. I did have an impact. And that's the thing for whatever your product or service is. So now, with helping people figure out their sales strategy and, what their client is thinking and how they're going to plan that and execute on it all the way through their client journey for their sales strategy, then they can in turn help more people, with their product or service. And so not only do I create an impact for them, I create a ripple impact.
Yeah,
And,
because they then can
really,
help more people
yeah,
themselves, can't they?
it's so profound. And one of the things that holds people back is that for wherever it came from, often, in childhood or other experiences, there's a fear. And it's, we are an animal and you get that protection mode going on. Well, I'm not going to do this because I have to protect myself. And so depending on where it is and how severe, if you have something like imposter syndrome, that is going to be a much longer road to hoe to really accept that, hey, I'm worthy. What I'm doing is important, that I can create this impact. That's going to take you a longer time, right, to overcome that. But once again, that probably came out of experiences as a child, a young adult. And, but those bricks were added layer by layer. And you know what? You can chisel them off.
You can chisel them off and reshape and rebuild a new house.
Yes.
For a new you.
Yeah.
Do you know, I think that's so important, isn't it? Because people often think that their past experiences define their future or their current state, and they absolutely don't have to. They only do if you let them. And it's being aware of what it is that is coming from your past into your present state, and having that awareness as to how your behavior is changing in certain circumstances, and then being able to intervene and go, do you know, that's from my past. And sometimes we don't really realize where we have to do the deep work, don't we, to unravel why am I showing up this way, and go backwards a bit to say, okay, that was from that experience, and that experience been and gone, so I can let it go and step into the person that I want to be now. But it takes practice.
No.
You can't just do it like this. And I know from my personal experience, I was not a good communicator, and I've had to really work on it. I really was fearful of connecting with people because of this fear of rejection. And actually starting the podcast that I now do as a host has really been another lever up the ladder for me to help me get out of my own way. because we're the only ones that tend to be in our own way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it is that that little tweak of so here's a real simple example that people will often say, oh my gosh, I have so much I have to do. What if you tweak it? Because this is what I do. As soon as I hear my negative Nelly say that, I say, no, there are so many things I get to do today.
I get to do
them. And when I flip it around, it's your whole attitude. It's all of a sudden, I've empowered myself. And whenever I catch myself saying, because when I first started doing videos and things like this, and I was like going, I cannot memorize all this stuff. I can't do this. I'm not Meryl Streep. And I went, well, wait a minute. She didn't wake up or be born as an infant and suddenly be this great actress. She had years of training, and practice, right? Of learning, of education. I've never ever seen a baby go from rolling over onto their back and just standing up and walking gracefully across the room. It doesn't happen. Okay. And so I caught myself and I went, wait a minute. This is a skill like any other that can be learned, and I can learn it.
Yeah.
So it was that, and I'm never going to be, I can't memorize things still. It's really bad, but I can add, as long as I know the context and the content, I know what I know what I want to say. I can do it, and it's just letting go of some of those, our own binders and just saying, no, I don't think so. And sometimes it takes a little longer than others to let go of things and to move past something, because that happens too. I mean, I'll share like this super secret, so my late husband, he died 6 years ago, literally 6 years ago yesterday.
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
have yet to open any of the sympathy cards that I received.
Wow.
And so and every time I've gone and I look at this box and I go, well, is today the day? And I go, no, I'm not ready for that. And that's okay. So like there I put this barrier, because the emotional barrier.
Yeah.
Like, I just am not ready to read those.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'll ever be ready to read those.
Yeah.
And I recognize that about myself. And I sort of like, well, why? It's because I just don't want to go through the sadness and just thinking about it right now, I feel the headache coming on.
Yeah, and you did, and I totally, and thank you for sharing, because
I'm not
it's
be able to handle these cards even one at a time. And so, and yet, because he had a wonderful life. We had a wonderful life together, right? And death is a natural part of life. You're born.
It's the goal.
You die, right? But those cards, I just, can't do it. And that's okay.
And and you've got to for anything like that, you've got to process it on your own terms. And that's so important. And and it's totally fine if you don't open them, because he's not going to read them, is he? He's not, is he? And he's not going to be bothered if you don't read them either. It doesn't matter, because it's about celebration of the life.
Yes.
We all have an end date, and that's the only goal the only thing that we know is going to happen in our life for certain is death. It's like the only goal we get set when we're born. That we know is going to happen.
We get to choose how we want to live it.
Exactly.
Right?
We get to choose that journey and who we share the journey with. And it, often we can spend so much time focusing on the destination that we don't enjoy the journey. And it's totally about enjoying the journey and celebrating the journey, and not getting hung up on the aspects of the destination, especially in the context that you just described. So I think that's so important. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, sometimes that to me, that's more of like an obligation. And it's like, but I don't need to be that's like, once again, I don't have to do these things.
No, you get to choose.
I don't have to open these. I can do it on my terms when and if I'm ready. And it's like the people who wrote them, they got to express themselves and do that. It's the type of thing but the great thing about your brain is that you can actually think all these things through. And you can, okay, well, is there something else that's holding me back? Is there some reason why I don't want to look at these? And it's really just like, well, no, because I don't want to have a cry fest and have a headache for 5 days,
I mean, you could do it if you really wanted to, just in the context of that. You could burn them if you wanted to and have a little lovely fire, if that takes it off your agenda.
So no, I just keep them in the box, and they're all in a box. But, it's just one of those things. So I just want people to recognize that there are sometimes things that, we can also recognize that, well, that's just not for me. And that's okay. Right.
And that's okay.
But, sort of think through the whole thing. Like, well, is something holding you back? Is there some other latent reason why you can't do this? And when you spend some time and thinking about those, and it's just like, well, no, there's a real simple reason that I have that I don't want to go through these, is that, it's just, I don't want to go through that whole emotional upset for, I had to live with it for 3 years because he had terminal cancer, it wasn't like, okay, really, I think I've done my time.
You don't have to go through that all over again if you don't want to.
Exactly.
It's
but just as long as you take that, you really make sure that you're not holding yourself back for some other type of self-limiting belief or something else
Yeah.
that goes on. And,
Yeah.
you know.
And do you know, I think it's a really important point, because we can get ourselves hung up, can't we, on you know, we could spend our time looking at things that are actually not going to serve us, rather than
Yeah.
focusing our attention on the things that are. And it can be such an energy depleting activity, you know, especially when we hang on to past experiences that in the context of growing are not serving us, and it just sucks the energy emotionally out of you. Like you mentioned, mentally you don't have the capacity. Physically it's completely draining. Physically, you know, you mentioned your headache can come on, and so you notice the physical symptoms as well as the emotional ones. And spiritually, it doesn't really align with your what your purpose is, what you're passionate about, what your values and beliefs are, and so it can deplete you in all of those four quadrants of your well-being, for what gain? And I think it's really important that we do take that time to focus on asking ourselves the question: is this past experience or past activity going to serve me going forward in the future, and how is it going to help me? And that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, because also even in business, and you'll say, well, because I'll get that, well, I've tried that before and it didn't work. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, how did you try it before? And what was the actual process that you used, and in what context?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can actually work through that and say, okay, well, this is a little different now, and maybe this language is going to be more effective for you. It's like, well, you tried that before, but you weren't thinking like the client, and you weren't framing the conversation in a way that mattered to them, that
Yeah.
was important, that made that connection. And so, yeah, you tried it before and it didn't work. Well, there was a good reason why it didn't work. And people also put those same things, they'll start working on something or start getting into that. And then they start, oh, I mean, this is a classic, because I have someone sign up for my whole program. They get started in it. And then they go, well, I've had this come up in my life and I'm just too busy. I'm not going to I just can't continue. I've got too many things on my plate. And it's like, well, that's okay. You have to decide what you want to segment and what you can pick up later. And I said, just because it's not right now, it doesn't mean that it won't be right in another month or another 3 months.
Yeah.
And those are the same thing. We put up these different types of blockers, and it's just like, sometimes timing is everything in life and in work.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's not right for right now, and you need to get past that. And so those are additional examples. Or I'll have somebody who gets behind, and then they're beating themselves up, and that they don't feel like they should continue because they've gotten so far behind. And it's like, well, that we're not on a race. You're not getting graded. And everyone some people need to take more time to absorb the material and take care of things that have come up that they're dealing with. But, the important thing is that you do get to the end, and that you can create this additional impact and value for what you're doing out in the world. And so when you're going through those things, and people do that, sometimes like I myself yesterday, I didn't attend something because I knew I couldn't. I mean, I had all these things, and I went, okay, something's got to give today. And it was something that I didn't want to give up, but it was like, well, something's got to give, and I'm going to give that to myself so that I can get through everything else, which I did.
Yeah.
And so, all of us have choices every day. Sometimes the choice isn't obvious, but it's always there.
Yeah.
And we always have the power to choose.
Yeah, we do.
And so you can choose to let go this so that you can do this.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point. I know you mentioned initially, context of brain health is sometimes people give up one of the most fundamental things that help us function effectively, which is sleep.
Yeah.
And they forget that actually, being effective for others starts with being effective for yourself.
Yeah.
And having that self-care to say, okay, like you said, I've got all these things on my agenda. I can't do them all. I need to drop something in order to get the quality of sleep and the end routine at the end of my day that's going to serve me and not hurt me, so that I can restart the next day productive and effective. And it's so important. I'd love to transition to the 5 pillars of brain health and do the fun facts now, because we've been talking about the 5 pillars as part of the conversation. So is remembered by the mnemonic facts, where F is for feelings, A is for actions, C is for connections, T is for thoughts, and S is for surroundings. So let's just dive into some of them. So starting with feelings, which is really connecting with our emotions and understanding what emotions are running in the background and foreground. What's the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh, I mean, I've had so many funny and embarrassing things that have happened to me. I mean, every meal that I go to outside at a restaurant, the first thing is it looks like I should be wearing a bib like a 2-year-old because I'm wearing the meal on my shirt. So, it's just, I just one of those things that just like, well, okay, if that's the worst thing that happens to me today, that's why you got spray and wash, baby. Well, those are things that are just ongoing, right? And I just really have that frame, and I just will, and even if it's like something that's like I like miss a connecting flight for something, and it's like, okay, I've had something where my luggage got lost, and I ended up having to spend the night in Buffalo, and then get up at some crack of dawn to drive up, into Toronto, and I was like, okay, well, I didn't get a lot of sleep that night, but still, if that's the worst thing, you know, and I did this before my husband's cancer, by the way. It was like, well, if this is the worst thing that happens to me today, bring it on, because I can deal with this. I
Yeah.
can repivot, I can adapt and do what I need to do. And so those are all things that I think are really important for your feelings. And that involves, you know, also tapping in. And sometimes when something like that really seems to set you off, it's to just take that moment for yourself and just let it go. And just really that simple action, those 5 seconds, and then, okay, this is where I'm at.
Mm.
And also if I sometimes I'll just take a walk, and it just to breathe the air, to move my body, blow out the cobwebs. And it's amazing how a 5 or a 10-minute walk just around this, the house or whatever it is, if you're at a hotel, around the lobby, can really refresh you,
Yeah.
and give you back, your feet are on the earth, you're breathing the air, and all of a sudden you are back into yourself, and you feel that control come back because you've taken control
Yeah.
by letting yourself and giving yourself this gift to have that moment.
And that's a really important point, because this is about being aware that you've gone into a slight fight or flight response state, and your cortisol levels are up, and actually by checking out of the situation, the surroundings that have put you into that state, and reconnecting with a safer place, which could be outside, and connecting with nature, which we know is super helpful for our brain health, actually down regulates you, reconnects you with your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your calming system in your body and in your mind, and actually down regulates your cortisol levels and brings you back to a much calmer state. And the best thing, like you started off with, is through breathing, and particularly breathing through your nose to create that calming state. So thank you for sharing that. I'd love to dive into the next pillar, which is actions. What's the most rewarding or fulfilling thing you've ever done?
Oh, and I already alluded, it was helping my husband through 3 years of terminal cancer. Absolutely.
Wow. That's I don't think people really realize how rewarding helping somebody
Yeah.
in that situation is. And I've heard other people mention this too, it can be such a fulfilling experience,
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of connecting with the other person, and at all of the levels that we talked about, emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, in ways that you would never have expected.
Yeah. No, I mean, not only helping him, helping myself, helping my daughter, helping, our extended family. It's just, it was a gift.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Connection to yourself is the third pillar. What is the most important value that guides you in life?
Oh, I love, it's to be of service, to be of value, to help others. It is just something that, and I've always been able to do that through sales, right? Of being able to help others through that way. But I do it in all kinds of different ways, and they can be little things, that you do for people. And I like to make sure that every day I commit a random act of kindness. And
I love that.
so, and that can be just, you're standing in line at the grocery store and you notice the person in back of you and she's wearing this really beautiful color that looks great on her. And I'll just say, hey, I got to tell you this, and then they feel good about, oh, wow. You might even strike up a conversation. Oh yeah, I bought this when I was on a trip, in Petaluma, California, because I took a wrong turn. Who knows what they'll say, but that's something that can lift your own spirit so much. And can you imagine what a better world would live in if everyone committed a random act of kindness every day?
Yeah. Do you know, I think that's so important, because it's so easy, isn't it, just to ignore the little things in life. And often it's the littlest things that can make the biggest difference to people. And it can be that real game changer for their day. Just having that small random act of kindness, getting somebody a coffee, or simply saying thank you so much for all of your support and dropping it in an email, or sending a beautiful message about someone to their boss. Whatever it happens to be can make a huge difference, can't it?
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that. And I think we're all there to be of service to others, because we're a human race, aren't we? And we can forget that important part of connection. Connection isn't just about connecting with others, but when we do that, we also connect with ourselves, and making sure that the whole system is working harmoniously.
Yeah.
Rather than against itself. So the final bit I'd love to dive into is surroundings. What is the most, and I want to go with this one, what's the most beautiful place you've ever visited, and what makes it so special?
Man, that's a tough one. Because there's been, I've really been lucky to see so many different things, but I think the one that comes to mind is being in the redwoods. And once again, so north of Petaluma, but in Northern California, and just being in one of the groves that you've walked into, and just the silence, and yet there's not silence. You can hear the birds and the crickets and the squirrels scuttering underfoot. You can hear the wind in the trees, and then just these magnificent trees, and that you're surrounded by, and that how you're just part of this, that you're one small piece of this really beautiful tapestry. And so I would definitely say the redwoods.
Oh.
But I've been fortunate now. I've seen the 4 largest trees in the world. So I'm wondering what's fifth, because and all 4 by happen the way I happen to be in the US, but what's next on the list?
Do you know what I think it's such an important point, isn't it? Because I mean, I love connecting with nature. I love being outdoors. I love taking my daughter outdoors and doing exactly what you say, which is really connecting with nature and seeing how small we are in comparison to nature itself. And we're just a tiny little marker in the sand, aren't we, of time? And it's
Yeah.
really taking the time to connect with that beauty of the world and
Yeah.
understand we're a part of it, and we're responsible for it. And that whole system doesn't work in isolation. It has to work together. We're dependent on it too, aren't we? So
Yeah. Yeah. Now you talk about, saving the planet. It's really, the planet will survive. It's just whether or not we as a
we
species
will.
will survive, or whether we will go by the way of so many other species,
Yeah.
and cease to exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's our
So
choice.
true.
Once again, we have the power to choose our destiny right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And it was, we recently had the Jubilee over here with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and it was a key theme is making sure that we have that awareness to make that difference, that positive change, to look after the planet and ultimately look after ourselves,
Yeah.
and acknowledging that we're that's part of the system, and we're on a knife edge at the moment
Yeah.
in the context of will we have a future? Will our children have a long future based on the damage we've done now, and how can we reverse it and be kinder to the planet and hence to ourselves? Such an important thing. I'd love to dive back into the growth mindset piece, and to just really explore, how do you help people step out of their comfort zone? What are the key things do you feel are the transition between being in their comfort zone and being in their, well, I like to call their growth or their learning zone? Is how can we help people get into that space?
Yeah. So there's a number of different things. So people learn in different methods, but one of the most profound things is by actually doing. And
Mm,
so when I work with clients, we have an education component of the program, but everything's live, and Q&A during and after. And then we have worksheets and exercises to be done. And then we workshop those in additional sessions. And so one of the things is that you may be working with a specific client on a worksheet or an exercise, and somebody else whose business is completely different. I've had clients say it completely opened my eyes to a different way of thinking by watching how you went through that with them. And it's that questions and gently probing and gently challenging that status quo. And, what if? The 2 most powerful words in the English language are what if?
what
What if?
if?
And so, and then through that, people they start to, and it can be just through those conversations, and maybe they have to hear it 3, 4, 10 times, but all of a sudden the connection occurs. And that's that incredible spark. And
Yeah,
it can be with anything. I still remember when I was learning, I think it was trig. I got really stuck on trigonometry. And it wasn't until, you really started to think about it in a different way, because I would just like all the stuff that was in trig, I don't know why, I just really struggled with it.
yeah,
And it was the geometry that sort of taking it back to, well, the, you know, the sun's basically a circle type of
Yeah.
thing, and how that rotates and the diameter and all these different ways of looking at it or thinking at it. And one of the things that I did, because I actually, in like high school, I actually was a tutor for math for people who are really struggling with math. And one of the things that I found is if I could associate it with something else they did. So if they were at the golden age, you had home ec, and I'd say, well, what if you had to have, this recipe, what would you do? And they could tell you right away, well, that's fractions,
Yeah.
You're doing in wood shop. Well, how are you going to get the best cut out of this piece of wood so that you can make, the table with chairs in the drawer? Oh, well, I have to do this. And I said, well, that's math. You just did geometry, because it's same with cutting out sewing with a pattern and aligning with the grain. That it's just when I started to realize there's all these different ways that you can look at it, all of a sudden all the pieces fell in place, and it was like, oh, well, that's simple. Okay, I get it now. So then I was like, okay, I can now rock integral calculus, right?
Yeah.
But those types of things, it's like there's different ways to associate how you're doing stuff. And sometimes having someone take and go down it seems like, well, why are we even doing this? This seems weird. But it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I get it. I see the connection. Oh.
Yeah. And I think it's so important having that dynamic with a team, is because not only do people's brains, everybody's brain is different and we learn differently. So how one person learns is not going to be necessarily the same as another. But making it relatable, and also by practicing, you actually build resilience. A lot of the resilience training that you tend to get in corporations of you go and attend a lecture and they tell you about how certain things to do, but actually building resilience in the context of life is about practicing in a safe environment similar situations or different situations that could arise, to allow you to deal with them in a way that you haven't even thought about previously, but in a safe way, so that if they came up again, exactly the same as we talked about on your road trip experience, if they come up again, you're like, oh, that's okay, I can deal with it because I've dealt with it in a safe environment and I know how to do it, so I can do it again. And that's how we build resilience. It's exactly, we learn. The way we learn is through trying stuff in a safe space so we don't hurt ourselves, which is our learning zone. And when we go a bit too far beyond it into the danger zone, that's when we end up pulling back and calming ourselves down, but always increasing that learning zone, and the zone gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But it's having those people around you to allow you to do that that's so important.
Yeah. And having also the interaction, and then having other people then, not me, say, oh, well, I would try it this way. And what about this? And that it just, everybody gets that level of engagement, but it's the doing more than anything else. Because if you just hear a talking head and you don't actually do, nobody can get through math if you don't do the problems.
No,
you got to actually you got to do the work.
You got to do the work. You can't spend all your time talking about it. You've just got to go and do it, haven't you? And learn through trial and error or trial and improvement.
Well, and obviously when you're working with experts, you have the opportunity, just like you would if you're looking at a teacher, they're going to help you and help you get past it, move forward, right? And they're going to guide you along the journey and guide you along the path, so that you are like, oh gosh, now we're going to learn this week. Woohoo. Well, I made it through this last part. It worked out okay. I'm ready to learn this new thing. And I'm ready to do the work.
Lynn, it's been fascinating. What one piece of advice would you give to anyone who is trying to make a sale or build a relationship in their life, shall we say, and they've kind of got these limiting beliefs that are holding them back from moving forward? What would your piece of advice be to anyone who's in that position?
I want you to think like the client, and because they're looking for a solution, or if it's a family member, they're looking for a way to solve a problem or address a concern that matters to them, so that they can move forward, so they can move past it, so they can, do whatever it is that they want to do. And so when you think like that, all of a sudden you can put yourself in their shoes, you can see something from their perspective, and a whole new world opens up for you, because then you realize that, oh, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I can help them get from where they are to where they need to be.
Yeah. Great advice. Thank you so much, Lynn. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your stories and your insights into your world and the successful sales experiences that you've had and everything in between. So how can people get hold of you to learn more about you and what you do and get involved in your programs?
Yeah, so Ruth, first of all, thank you so much. It's been a delightful conversation, and I've just loved connecting with you. And and it was through a relationship, it's through an introduction. So that's wonderful. Thank you. And I'm super easy to find. I am the only Lynn Whitbeck on LinkedIn, and you can find out all kinds of stuff about me at my website at petite2queen.com.
Yeah. So do make sure you check out Lynn's website. She's got so much useful content on there that's really helpful for anything around building relationships and connections. So make sure you check out that. Lynn, it's been an absolute pleasure. And if there's anything I can do to support you or your clients, just please don't hesitate to reach out. Remember, everyone, this is the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better and improve its performance, and then it's just been on the show to show you how. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like and share this episode and leave a review on my website or on Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for opportunities to optimize your brain health or unchain your pain from a past trauma, make sure you visit my website, www.ruthmaryallen.com, and use the code podcast10 at checkout to get 10% off all programs. And always remember, you are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better. You have the power to unchain your pain and optimize your brain power and performance so that you can win back energy and time doing what you love. Each episode of Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain with Dr. Ruth Allan is for educational and demonstration purposes only. The information shared in each episode should not be interpreted as medical advice. This episode should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical or physical condition. Do not use this episode to avoid going to your healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with a trusted healthcare professional before doing anything contained in this episode. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact www.ruthmaryallen.com/connect.